It was around 2 a.m. and the only light was a few dim lights in the hallways. It was mostly dark and I could only see silhouettes and shadows in my small 10 by 10 cell. I was lying on my back with my arms behind my head, deep in thought instead of sleeping like I should have been. My mind wandered to things I wished I could forget. When I heard footsteps, I started counting to 10, then I saw him. His face was hard and emotionless, just like everyone else here. He was just doing his job, making his rounds and not looking to make friends. I wasn't sure if he saw me, but it didn't matter. He was out there and I was in here. When he passed by, I stopped counting. No point, he wouldn't be back for another 92 minutes. I looked at the ceiling, planning what to do when I got out. 5 days in and I wake up, and I'd be leaving for good. I'd served about 7 months of my one sentence. My job was waiting for me, but everything else would be different. My older brother had fixed my car, taken care of my house, and managed my dwindling savings. Was I still angry? Angry didn't even come close. Almost there, but I buried those feelings until I got out. I finally understood why guys who do 10 to 20 years come out as empty shells, leaving all traces of humanity at the door when they check in. Survival is key, and this place is like a vacation compared to the tough prison up north. I closed my eyes again, hoping to get a few hours of sleep. I missed my old bedroom with the blackout shades, but I knew my life would never be the same. "I'll pick you up next Tuesday," my brother Gary told me over the phone in the visitor center during our last visit. We looked at each other. "Hey, buddy," peeking through this plexiglass one last time. "What do you want to grub on your first night out?" "A juicy steak, medium rare." Gary smirked. "Steve, you're a pushover. I figured you'd asked for something more daring to sneak past the missus. You'll crash at Andy's and my place until you get sorted. There's not much food or furniture left in your crib, so this gives you time to stock up. It ain't fancy like the Ritz-Carlton, but it's clean and you can come and go as you please," he said with a grin. "Thanks, I appreciate it." "I'll head over before dark," Steve replied. He totally dissed me, but whatever, we're family and that's just how it goes. Don't stress about Mom and Dad, they'll come around eventually. We knew this drama wasn't gonna end anytime soon. Both sides are feeling some deep emotions. Saw my kids recently, 2 weekends ago at Mom and Dad's place. Heather hasn't changed a bit, but John has this awful bull-shaped haircut that's apparently the latest trend. I straight up told him it looked terrible, and you know what he said. He said I'm not his dad and he doesn't have to listen to me. I wanted to smack him but Mom was there. "You'll have your hands full, for sure." Man, Jan wouldn't have had the guts to say that if I was there, even though I'm his dad. Him and his sister stayed with their mom after I got out. I had plenty of time once I was out of prison. I was just waiting for the right moment, no rush. Even though the divorce was finalized, I still owned half the house. Kathy owed me about $65,000 to buy me out. She probably took all our bonds and CDS from the bank lockbox. Luckily, I gave my lawyer a list of everything so there wouldn't be any argument. When I finally get out, Kathy and my ex-buddy Bob totally screwed me over, but that's all water under the bridge now. The first time caught me off guard, but it won't happen again. I'm just biding my time, reminiscing and hoping for better days once I'm out of this dump. That's when I can start over and get my life back on track. I just hope I can keep it together until then. Life was good before jail, I never saw it coming. Some fake friends hinted they knew something weeks before, but never spilled the beans. What were they hiding? Can you believe they thought I was cool with it? Everyone must have known I wouldn't stand for that crap, but no one wanted to step in. We had a solid marriage, I thought. 12 years, 2 kids, a nice house, and good jobs. Yeah, we had our little fights, but I loved my wife and never saw this coming. We didn't have many friends, just a few couples from the neighborhood. Most of them had been married for over 7 years and were around our age. We all had at least 2 kids, except for Bob and Connie. They've been trying to have a kid for ages with no success. Kathy probably knew why, but I tried to mind my own business. Connie started hitting the bottle hard about a year ago. At first, she was just sad, but then things got messy. Bob didn't drink much, he was busy looking after her. "Bob, sweetheart, get me another drink," she'd say. By the end of the night, she'd be demanding drinks and Bob had to carry her home. It was sad, but his problem, not mine. "Connie was a wreck tonight," I said, getting ready for bed. "I think she passed out more than once." Greg. Judy must have left early because she was getting undressed and asked Greg for help. Nobody wanted her near the pool. I felt bad for Bob. My wife told me Connie is really upset about not being able to have kids, but taking it out on Bob isn't right. I suggested adoption, but she wouldn't even consider it. She's blaming Bob for their issues. They'll either figure it out or get divorced. We are supposed to go out to dinner next week. I hope she acts normal, but I'm not holding my breath. I'll talk to her this week, maybe. She's gonna chill out for one night, my wife said, trying to stay positive. But Connie didn't chill out. "Waiter, how's a girl supposed to get a drink around here?" she yelled, slurring her words. She started going off on Bob again, and he was about to lose it. That's when I stepped in. "Come on, Connie, you promised me a dance," I said, pulling her onto the dance floor. She tried to resist, but I insisted. We danced for 3 songs while my wife talked to Bob, who looked miserable. When we got near the hall, Connie excused herself to the bathroom. After 5 minutes, I debated what to do next. She asked 2 ladies to check on Connie because things weren't looking good. One of them asked if she was wearing a bright yellow dress, and when I confirmed, she shook her head. "She's passed out in a stall." I offered to keep watch while they went to get her. I went in, propped her up by the sink, and splashed cold water on her face. It worked for a bit, but she collapsed again. I had to practically carry her back to our table. Bob offered to help me get Connie to the car because she's out cold and won't wake up. "Hey, wake up. Connie is wasted and Bob is mad and embarrassed. Steve, take a seat. This isn't the first time Connie's been like this, but it's gonna be the last." I ignored Bob's complaints and carried her out while he grabbed her purse and said goodbye. I laid Connie on the back seat and patted Bob on the back. "Sorry, man. Thanks for helping out. I'm at a loss and don't know what to do. You guys need counseling. You can't handle this on your own. If you need help, give me a call. Kathy and I will help out however we can." "All right," he said, but I could tell he was just saying that. Their issues were too serious to solve. I figured they had maybe a couple of months left at most. I wasn't too far off, but nobody expected what happened 3 weeks later. It was just after 10:30 p.m. on a Thursday when we heard sirens and saw bright lights at the end of our street. Everyone ran outside to see what was going on. "Kathy, stay here. I'll go check it out," I said as I joined the crowd. I saw the fire rescue squad trying to get Bob's car door open. "What's happening? Hey, is Bob okay?" "Wait, never mind, it's Connie." They were fighting. She snatched his keys, took off, and raced down the street. But she didn't get far. Connie crashed into a parked car at like 40 miles per hour. The ambulance came, put her on a stretcher, and drove off with Bob and her to their place. Their front door was wide open, lights still on, and the house was a mess. I called Kathy and filled her in, then locked up Bob's place and left a note saying I had his keys. "How's Connie?" my wife asked when I got home. "Not good," I replied. She wasn't wearing a. Bob was driving when he suddenly hit the car in front of him, causing the airbag to deploy. Unfortunately, his wife's had hit the driver's side window so hard that it shattered. They were going about 35 miles per hour. Bob is with her at the hospital, so we should wait before going down there. Hyun is busy dealing with something, so we'll go tomorrow when things calm down. For now, let's get some rest and go to bed. Tomorrow we'll come quickly. We kissed goodnight but couldn't sleep, worried about Connie. The next morning at 11 o'clock, my phone rang. Steve said Connie is on life support and my wife yelled that she's leaving. Bob's in bad shape, someone needs to go be with him. "Meet me at the hospital," she said urgently before ending the call. Damn, the poor guy just can't catch a break. On the way, I grabbed lunch for the 3 of us and called Kathy's parents to pick up the kid after school. I quietly entered the waiting room where my wife and others were comforting Bob. "How's he doing?" she asked. "Not good," my wife whispered. The doctor spoke to Bob and he hasn't said much since. Bob, I said, sitting next to him. You all right? It was a stupid question. Man, I was just trying to figure out what to say to Steve. Connie's not improving, her brain activity is low. I'm lost, man. Steve started crying, so I signaled for everyone to back off and give us some room. Has anyone called Connie's parents? They are on their way. The hospital staff keeps bringing up living wills and donor cards, it's like they are waiting for her to die. The doctor even asked if I'd consider pulling the plug if she's brain dead. I mean, come on, she's my wife, not some piece of meat. I was shouting at him, like why can't they just let her be? Fix her, they are doctors, can't they fix her? I had no answer. Connie's parents showed up soon after and went into her room with Bob. There was a ton of crying and cursing, her dad seemed to blame Bob for Connie's condition. The doctor went in and about 20 minutes later everyone came out. Her parents left heartbroken, knowing they'd never talk to their daughter again. We left the hospital around 8 o'clock and picked up the kids from Kathy's parents' house. I kept thinking, God, I hope I never have to make that choice. 48. A few hours later, Bob, Connie's parents, and the doctor were in the room. They switched off the machine keeping her alive, and she passed away peacefully. We tried to comfort Bob as much as possible, even though Connie had been a handful. Bob really loved her though. Funerals always make you remember the good times, not the bad ones. The funeral was packed, and everyone was crying. Bob took it really hard and ended up taking a month off to go visit his family on the East Coast. I told him we'd look after his place. I love you, you know that, right? I said to my wife. As I was getting ready for bed, I was feeling so worn out from the past few weeks. Finally, things were starting to go back to normal. If I ever end up like Connie, just let me go. I wouldn't want to be kept alive by a machine. Steve, don't talk like that, said Bob. That could never happen to us. A few weeks later, Bob came back and he seemed to be doing better. Kathy helped him go through Connie's stuff and after 3 months, he was starting to come to terms with everything. We made sure to include him in social stuff and even tried setting him up on a few dates, but nothing really panned out. Life was going on, or at least that's what I thought. 6 months later, Bob seemed to have his mojo back. Seeing him smile and have a good time again was a huge relief. He was back to his old self, socializing and all. Looking back, maybe I missed some signs. Kathy and I were still tight, but something just didn't feel right. We were still getting physical as often as before, but something felt off. After a few months, I finally asked Kathy if something was bugging her. Nothing really, Steve. Why do you ask? You've been a bit distant lately. Everything's fine, she smiled. Maybe you just haven't been getting enough. Sex if you want more, just ask sex. I thought she'd never called it that before. Always sex. I smiled, kissed her and shut down my thoughts. I'll never forget Friday, August 20th. It was the day my world fell apart. Kathy called me at work to say the kids would be with her folks for the weekend and asked what time I'd be home. I'll make sure I'm home early. Need me to pick up anything? No, just let me know when you'll be home. All right. A million thoughts ran through my mind. It was 3:30. Yo, it took me like an hour and a half to finally leave work. I was just thinking about the dope weekend coming up. I drove home real slow to dodge getting a speeding ticket, but I still made it back in 28 minutes. When I pulled up, I noticed 2 cars in the driveway, but one was Bob's. I called out, "Hey, honey, I'm home." Bob and Kathy were in the kitchen. "What's up, Bob?" she asked. "Steve, I need to talk to you." "Take a seat," Bob said. Kathy seemed nervous, her voice shaking. "I'll just stand," I replied. "Steve, I wanted to tell you myself." "Before you get the papers," I was confused. "Kathy, what papers?" She stepped back. "Divorce papers." She could barely say it. My heart skipped a beat. "Kathy, what are you talking about?" "What divorce papers?" "Steve," Bob started, but I cut him off. "Bob, stay out of this. This is between me and my wife." Then it hit me. I looked at her, then at him, then back at her. "Bob, you should leave now." My hands clenched into fists. "Kathy, you and I need to talk now," I shouted. "Bob, stay," my wife said. Steve, this involves him too. Bob, leave now or you'll. I'll be leaving in a body bag. I warned you as you headed for the door, Kathy. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, Steve. I'm in love with Bob. I'm sorry. How long has this been going on? Even before Connie died. Bob stopped, his eyes burning with anger. Steve, you don't know anything. Oh, I know enough. While I was consoling you, you were screwing my wife. Get out of my house, both of you. It's my house too, Steve, Kathy said. Not anymore. Get out. I'll get my things and leave. No, leave now, Kathy, Bob said, pulling her away. The door was listening to him as I teased Steve. I told him I'll come back for my stuff when he's calmed down, but he'll probably be dead by then, I spat. They left, their eyes fixed on me. After they left, I lost it. 2 beers and a lot of destruction later, the house was a mess. I threw all of Kathy's stuff on the lawn and turned on the sprinklers for 4 hours. Then I locked up the house and drank until I passed out. The next morning, I saw Kathy had taken her stuff. I was still angry and devastated. I didn't call anyone to tell them what had happened. Hey, so here's what went down. I called Kathy's parents to chat with my kids, but her mom wouldn't let me. Turns out Kathy picked them up last night. Total nonsense, Fran. She was just grabbing her clothes from the lawn. I asked her to let me talk to my kids, but she hung up on me. Tried calling back, but no answer. I was furious, so I went ahead and cancelled all our credit cards and took out as much cash as I could from the bank. Then I made some coffee, had some toast, and started planning my day. Gonna change the garage code, get new locks, and move anything valuable to my brother's place. Right as I was about to leave, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole and saw a guy holding a big envelope. He hung around for a bit then took off. I filled in my bro Gary and his Mrs. Andy on what went down and told them to keep it on the down low. Then I went to Home Depot to get some new locks. On my way back, I spotted Bob's ride in the driveway with Kathy loading it up. I should have just driven past, but I was too damn mad for that. Instead of cruising by, I revved up with my tires screeching. I pulled into my driveway and ended up crashing into the back of Bob's car. Bob hopped in his car right when mine bumped into it, pushing his car into the closed garage door. I backed up about 15 feet and then floored it again, driving his car through the garage door. Steam was pouring out from under my hood and my engine was making a horrible noise, but I managed to reverse once more. I backed up 10 feet, floored it again, but my car only moved Bob's a few feet before it stalled. My heart was racing as I grabbed my son's aluminum bat from the garage and started swinging, smashing the driver's side windows and the windshield. I was just about to open Bob's door when I heard, "Yo," there were some loud voices behind me and a cop told me to drop the bat and put my hands on my head. So I did what he said, dropped the bat, and kneeled down. They handcuffed me and threw me in the back of the patrol car. Bob, who was with me, was shook and scared. He got out of his car. I wanted to threaten him but couldn't. My wife was crying, talking to the cops and looking at me. I just smiled back. They took me downtown, booked me, and gave me one call. I called my brother Gary since it was the weekend. Ended up spending 2 nights in jail before my court appearance on Monday. I pleaded not guilty. So, I was found guilty and the judge set my bail. Gary ended up bailing me out later that afternoon. Steve, they are saying it was attempted murder or at least assault with a deadly weapon. I know, first take me to the bank, she probably cleared out the accounts. But I need to check if the cash is gone from our accounts, but not the CDS and bonds. However, a court order stopped me from taking any of them. You could have at least left me $5 in our account, you're really cheap. I told Kathy when she answered her phone that I needed that money. Bob doesn't make enough money for me and the kids. I have a house payment to make. Maybe I should just start a little fire in the living room to warm up. Steve, stop talking nonsense. I'm sorry about all of this, but you're making it harder. Why can't you just accept it and move on? I'll move on when you send my kids back home, Steve. I can't, especially with your current state of mind. I don't think you'll harm them, but I can't take that chance. After this is over, I'll let you see them as much as. You can say what you want, but I can't say the same for you and Bob. This is the last time I'll talk to you. From now on, you'll have to deal with my lawyer. I'm sorry it had to come to this, Kathy. You have no idea how sorry you and Bob are gonna be. She hung up on me during my court date. My lawyer argued temporary insanity, saying my actions were impulsive after Kathy's bombshell. Kathy and Bob said they feared for their lives and mentioned getting a restraining order. Mr. Moore, the judge, asked, "Did you tell Mr. Kelly that if he didn't leave, he would be leaving in a body bag?" I can't remember my exact words, Your Honor, but it might have been something like that. How would you feel if a friend was messing around with your wife behind your back? The judge wasn't impressed and my lawyer told me to shut up. Steve, don't say anything, got it? From now on, you don't remember anything. Do you understand? I'm trying to show that you didn't know what you were doing and your comments aren't helping. Chris, my boss and main man, was right. My buddy had my back all the way, saying I was the best employee and never losing my cool. After his testimony, the case was closed and we were waiting for the judge's decision. When I got back to work, my boss suggested hiring some goons to take care of Bob and Kathy, but I said no thanks, I'll handle it myself. I can only imagine how much that would have cost. Fast forward 6 months and $112,000 later, I got screwed over by both my ex-wife and the legal system. The divorce went through and she got half of everything. Now the house and all our valuable stuff has to be sold off. She said her jewelry was gone and blamed me for taking it. I said mine was missing too and hinted that she might have taken it all. Now I'm in jail, can you believe it? I shouted at my lawyer after the judge's decision. Steve said it could be worse, I could have killed him and been charged with manslaughter. With good behavior, I'll be out in less than 8 months and my record will be clean in 2 years. He told me to do my time, get out, and move on. It's easy for him to say. I wasn't looking forward to being in jail 24/7. I appealed, but man, I didn't get anywhere in a year. My life went from awesome to terrible, all because of Kathy and Bob. Steve said your job will still be there when you get out, so don't do anything dumb and keep an eye out. Chris warned me after my last visit with my kids. I decided to turn myself in and started my sentence in the county jail. My brother put some cash in my commissary account, but most of the stuff they had was crap. I didn't have a cell phone or computer, so I just wrote my thoughts down on paper and called my brother, mom, and kids collect every other week to stay in the loop. During a visit, my brother told me, "I'll make sure your car gets fixed before you leave. I got someone to do it so we can cash in on the insurance. I'm also taking care of your lawn and put in new deadbolts." Kathy took all her and the kids' clothes, but left the furniture when I demanded a court order for her to move it out. I'm grateful my brother had my back. Kathy lets my parents see the kids every other Sunday, but she talks trash about me and my family. She calls me a jailbird dad and plans to lay down strict rules when I'm out. My parents put up with her to see the kids. I'll be able to talk to you again in a week. I've sorted out my visitation rights. I get to see the kids every other weekend, a whole month in the summer, and holidays. I told my boss I'll need a week to get back into the swing of things once I'm out. I was so excited to get out of that prison uniform and into regular clothes. Gary was waiting for me outside, and we went straight to the nearest bar to celebrate. We clinked our bottles before chugging down the first of 3 beers. Andy has a steak dinner ready for us with all the fixings. You can crash at our place for a few nights until you sort out your stuff at the house. Hey, the stuff is still up for grabs but no one has made an offer yet. Kathy wants to lower the price but needs your okay. I got rid of the master bedroom set like you said. Dinner was amazing, I ate more than I have in 8 months. I was loving the freedom to do whatever I wanted. I had a bit too much to drink, can vaguely remember having 5 or 6 beers and 3 glasses of wine. Woke up after 10 o'clock the next morning and finally got out of bed and made it to the bathroom by 11 o'clock. Found a note in the kitchen, if you're reading this. Hey, you made it through last night. There's coffee ready and everything else you need is in the fridge. The spare bathroom has soap, a razor, shaving cream, a toothbrush, and toothpaste. If you need anything else, just let us know and we'll grab it for you tonight. The keys to your car and house are on the key rack by the back door. Don't do anything dumb. See you around 5:30. My brother knows me too well. I could only handle 2 cups of coffee and an English muffin after a shower and shave. I felt almost human again. Gary laid out a fresh change of clothes. Within an hour, I went back to my house. The outside looked the same. I sat in my fixed car for 10 minutes before going in. Memories came rushing back. I saw the new lock on the door, and with a twist of the key, I was inside. The place was a disaster, with stuff all over the place and clothes scattered on the floor. The kitchen was kind of clean, and the fridge still had old food in it. Leaning against the sink, I saw the hole in the wall from when I punched it in anger. Upstairs, I checked out the kids' closets. My bedroom was pretty much empty, just a few old keepsakes, my dresser, and clothes. You could see where the bed and her dresser used to be by the dark spots on the carpet. The room definitely needed a makeover before I could actually use it again. The rest of the house needed a good cleaning before I could even think about selling it, but I wasn't in a rush to do that. I made a list of things that needed fixing and decided I didn't necessarily want to do it all myself. I went to the bank to make sure she had emptied the lockbox, and I needed some written proof from them, which they confirmed. They had video evidence as extra proof. My lawyer said she took everything and filed a motion to get it back. The court already told Kathy to return everything she took from the lockbox. Steve, she's offering her half of the house for your half of the CDS and bonds. I told her to give back everything like the court said, or she'll get arrested for not following the order. She can be angry all she wants, but my job is to look out for your interests. That's why you hired a lawyer. Back at home, I checked what I had. So, I was thinking about reaching out to a contractor to sort out the walls, and I also needed Mary Mains to clean up the kitchen and dining room. I chucked the microwave and dishes in there, but the utilities were still working, so I could move back in once I got a bed. I just needed a queen-size bed, and I found a decent set for $900. At least I wouldn't be sleeping on a mattress that my ex-wife had shared with someone else. Hank the contractor came over on Saturday morning to give me an estimate. "Your walls are solid, must have hurt when you punched that stud," he said with a laugh. "Hey, I just need the holes in the walls fixed and a fresh coat of white paint, nothing fancy." "How much you think it'll cost?" $200 sound good. "That's my final offer, take it or leave it. You really helped us out with Bob in the car, all the guys in the neighborhood look up to you now. Randy even threatened to bury Linda if she ever pulled the same stunt Kathy did to you. You're a hero around here." I thanked him and said he could start whenever, as long as it's within 6 weeks. Got the bonds and CDS back in the bank lockbox, house is all fixed up and clean. Life is good. Getting back to normal when my kids came to stay with me for the weekend was kinda weird. I had to break the ice and tell them that even though things are different, this is still their home. My skin is tougher now, and I don't think anything can surprise me anymore. "Dad, we love you and we are sorry about what Mom did," John said. Heather nodded in agreement. "We didn't even know about Bob until Mom said we were moving to his house. We weren't happy then, and we are still not happy now. There was nothing you could do. Even without Bob, Mom and I wouldn't get along. We are back together, but what we had is done. I'm still your old man and I care about you. I'll always have your back." We hugged it out and had a chill night with pizza and a movie. I wanted to talk crap about their mom, but I decided not to. Our first weekend back together went well and we felt like a family again, even though things are different now. I got John a decent haircut and life carried on as usual. I went to work, had a bit of a social life, and spent time with the kids. John started playing soccer and Heather started dancing, keeping me on my toes. Everyone except my brother told me to move on and start fresh, but you're still on my mind. Hey, dude, you can totally find another girl, tie the knot, and start fresh with them. As for me, I just say screw it. I wasted 14 years on that witch. If I want to stay mad, it's my right. They haven't been through what I have in the last 2 years. Sometimes you need to get revenge to make the pain go away, and that's what I was gonna do, one way or another. Kathy wanted to lower the house price, but I refused. She was mad, but I didn't care. "Steve, it ain't gonna sell at this price in this market. We need to drop it by a lot. You gotta cough up at least $220,000 if you wanna bail out, otherwise the price ain't budging. We ended up splitting the bonds into CDS. She blew hers on a fancy new ride and a trip with Bob, while I saved mine to kickstart a savings fund. About 8.5 months after getting out of jail, Bob's crib went up in flames while they were at a soccer game. Someone had set fire to the electrical box and back of the house with gasoline, wrecking the place and cutting off the power. The next day, 2 cops showed up at my door, but I didn't give them anything. I was like, nah. So I was at a party in the neighborhood with like 10 people, and I told Steve, dude, you were so close, why didn't you do it? Then this cop starts accusing me, saying prove it. I was fed up, so I stood up and said, either charge me or let me go, or I'm calling my lawyer. They ended up letting me go, but they are still keeping an eye on me mentally. Check Che off my list, 1 down, 2 to go. I offered to take care of the kids since they couldn't stay in a house with no power for at least 2 months. So we ended up having a little vacation together. Steve, I know it was you. It doesn't matter what the police say, Kathy said while picking up the kids one night. I don't know what you're talking about. I was with our friends. Too bad you and Bob aren't invited anymore. Maybe I could put in a good word, I suggested sarcastically. Don't bother. We wouldn't go even if they begged us, she responded bitterly. Well, you have each other and that's all that matters for now, I said. What's that supposed to mean, she asked wide-eyed. Nothing, just that you two are lucky to have one another, I smiled. Not just on. So this time, the kids were all about hanging out with me more, but Kathy and Bob were not happy about it. I heard there were some pretty intense arguments between Bob and the kids, with them straight up telling him he's not their dad. Kathy warned me to stop causing drama, saying, Kathy, I never talk smack about you to the kids. You're their mom and I've made it clear they need to respect you. And as for Bob, he's a two-faced moron who should thank his lucky stars he's still breathing. But hey, he's not a bad guy, just not easy on the eyes, otherwise, I'd be a goner. He's good to your kids, so stop talking trash about him to them. It's not gonna happen. He means nothing to me, and I hope I get to piss on his grave one day. She gave me a deadly look, not that I'd actually hurt him, of course. Steve, I swear, what are you gonna do, Kathy? Cheat on me, divorce me, put me in jail, make my life a living hell. Oh wait, you already did all those things. You can't do anything more to me. Go back to your husband and leave me alone without another word. She walked away, and to think I once loved her. I watched her go. Man, work was going really well. It only took me a few weeks to get back up to speed. Chris then asked me to take on 4 more accounts. With no distractions at home, I had the time to reach out to the customers and set up trips to visit each facility for 2 days to learn about their operations. 3 accounts were a breeze, but the 2 that were run by TWW Incorp were a whole different ball game. They were changing their manufacturing process, so I had to make monthly trips to stay on top of things. The person in charge was smart but all over the place and kind of arrogant when I tried to get more information. Hey Chris, if I don't get the data we need, it's gonna mess up their system. After 2 calls, I found someone to help me talk to the engineer. Her name is Monica and she introduced herself with a handshake. She's got a degree in process engineering and has been with the company for about 5 years. We worked well together and she got me everything I needed. 2 weeks before finishing phase 1, I asked her out to dinner. I want to take Monica and her husband out for a meal. I'm having dinner as a thank you at the Hilton where I'm staying, they have an awesome restaurant. How about 6 o'clock? We said goodbye and I left work around 4:30 after finishing up some paperwork and emails. I headed to the restaurant at 6 o'clock and Monica showed up by herself. Where's your husband? I asked as I parked the car. I'm not married, STE, she replied. Oh, sorry, I just assumed, I said, noticing the rings on her fingers. I wear these rings to keep things professional, so no one tries to hit on me thinking I'm married. Plus, married people seem to get promoted more, so it's a good move. Man, they are quicker I think because they seem more put together. How do you handle company events? I just tell them he's out of town or something and they don't question it anymore. Well, you really had me fooled. We had a great dinner, and by the end, I talked about the best parts of the last 2 years. I can't believe they treated you like that. That's really messed up. Tell me about it. But it's all in the past now, and I'm moving on with my life. I was trying to start over, though getting revenge was still important to me. Steve, you're young and plenty of women would love a guy like you. Girl, you're probably right, she said, smiling and blushing. But I haven't had the time or ambition to start dating again. I'm still being cautious. Well, you asked me out, didn't you? I pointed out. You and your husband, I corrected. If I hadn't been married, would you still have asked me out, she asked. Probably. You're easy to talk to and not a loser like my ex, she replied. I'll take that as a compliment, I said, laughing. Dinner went great. I left the next day and wouldn't be back for a month. I asked her to call me weekly, especially if anything came up. And that's how it all started. I started feeling more comfortable around women, even those who weren't close friends. Whenever I visited, we would go out almost every night, which was about every couple of weeks. I still had some trust issues, but I was trying to work on them. We kept in touch through phone calls and emails. After a few months, we started kissing and getting more intimate. I felt like I was finally ready to take our relationship to the next level. I wondered if I was starting to feel normal again. When Monica mentioned she had plans on Wednesday night, I didn't think much of it. We had been physical the night before, and I had forgotten to get. So I was making plans with this girl Steve, and she told me she'd remember to bring condoms for our date on Thursday. I spent Wednesday looking for a new restaurant on the city map, trying out all the local spots. Finally, I found this nice Indian place about 25 minutes away and decided to check it out. I ordered a beer and the sampler platter and was ready to chill. But then I heard a familiar laugh and saw Monica with another guy, clearly on a more serious date than ours. They were holding hands and laughing, and I felt like I had lost out. I finished my beer, paid, and left. She didn't seem upset. I thought I had avoided her on Thursday and went to McDonald's for lunch. By 3 o'clock, Monica was following me, smiling and flirting. Did you take care of your conflict last night? She asked. Yes, and tonight you're all mine. I found a quiet, cozy Indian restaurant with a great sampler platter. I looked into her eyes. What type of food is it? Indian food. Her face went pale. I was there last night and saw someone I knew. What are the chances, Monica? I never blinked. Steve, I can't believe it. No need to explain, I dumped one lying bitch and don't need another. I walked away and ended my trip early. After ignoring 4 emails, I never received another one. Trust issues were still bothering me and Monica made them worse. Luckily, I was reassigned to someone else, a guy. 3 months later, I got an early Christmas present. Bob got hit by a car while crossing the street. Witnesses only saw a black 4-door car with tinted windows, which matched my black BMW. Saturday night, the police came to my house, my neighbor Tom. I saw them walking up to Mr. Moore and one of the officers said, "Hey, can we have a chat?" Mr. Moore replied, "Sure, no problem." I told my neighbor, "I'll catch up with you later." The other officer asked, "Do you own a black BMW 320i?" I said, "Yeah, what's up," joking about a parking ticket, but they didn't find it funny. "Is the car here?" they asked. "Yeah, it's in the garage," I replied. "What's going on?" She asked. "We'd like to check out the car," they said. I opened the garage and one of the officers started taking pictures of the front right side of my car. "Hey car, what's up with these scratches and marks on the bumper?" After 8 years, it's normal to have some nicks and scratches, but I have no idea how these got here. Now that I've answered your questions, what's the deal and why are you so interested in my car, Mr. Moore? There was a hit and run yesterday and witnesses said it was a black sedan with dark windows, like mine and a million others in town. I was annoyed and asked if my license plate matched or if anyone saw me driving, but the witnesses only saw the car. And as you can see, there's no major damage. Yesterday I was at home all day from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., so why are you singling me out? Your past issues with the victim and previous threats led you to come here. Thanks for cooperating, we'll leave now. Wait, I shouted as they walked to their car. Who got hit? Mr. Robert Kelly. I smirked. Is he dead? No, but is in critical condition. They left and I went inside, opened a bottle of wine, and ordered a pizza. I devoured most of the pizza and drank the whole bottle of wine in celebration. The neighborhood was abuzz. Did you hear about Bob? Some folks were saying poor guy never catches a break, while others thought he had it coming. I was feeling pretty good until 2 days later when Bob took a turn for the worse and passed away. I was all dressed up in a new suit, fresh haircut, and shiny shoes. Even got my car cleaned and waxed. The funeral home wasn't too crowded, but there were a lot of people outside when I got there. The chatter stopped as I walked in, and I didn't bother signing the book, just headed down the aisle. Kathy looked shocked to see me, and my kids were smiling. Kathy tried to stop me, but I just kept going. Before I got to the casket, but failed as soon as I walked in. I had been getting ready for this moment. When I finally reached the casket, I had a lot to say. I looked at Bob, lying peacefully, and spat in his face enough to drip onto his shirt. Kathy screamed, crying and cursing me out. This time, I just smiled. 2 down, 1 to go, I told her. She froze, fear in her eyes instead of tears. I warned you, I said quietly, and walked out of the now quiet funeral home. Over the next month, the cops questioned me 2 more times at Kathy's place. Just 'cause it wasn't my car doesn't mean I wasn't in on it. She said they never nabbed the driver, and after a few months, it was ancient history. When the cop car pulled up to my crib, I was ready for it. I locked up the place while my nosy neighbors watched me get hauled off to the station, again. Mr. Moore, do you know David Kent? One detective asked, flashing a pic at me. Sure do, I replied. How do you know Mr. Kent? I hired him to keep an eye on my ex-wife. He's been in and out for about a month. I shoved the picture back at him. So, why did you hire Mr. Kent to keep an eye on your ex-wife? Ever since she got together with her now-deceased husband, she's had nothing but bad luck. My kids live with her, so I hired David to make sure they are safe, especially at night. And now, your ex-wife is saying she's being followed and has spotted Mr. Kent multiple times. She called us, and when we picked him up, we found out you were the one who hired him, the detective said sarcastically. Mr. Moore, this is getting close to being considered mistreatment, and you could face charges if it continues. I'm just trying to protect my kids. I don't care what happens to my ex, Mr. Moore replied. But my kids are not like other kids, so if there's an issue, I'm counting on your department to make sure they are safe. It's not exactly against the law, but it's definitely pushing boundaries. Why don't you have a chat with your ex and figure something out? The last time I tried that, I ended up in jail. They eventually let me go, but they warned me they'd be keeping an eye on me. They needed a better excuse. I didn't pay David to blend in, I wanted Kathy to notice him. The next guy I hired stood out even more, looking like he came straight out of a Hell's Angels movie. He charged $30 an hour and worked for 3 hours. I only see my kids every 4th night, but it's working out just how I planned. I'm trying to push my ex to the brink so she has a breakdown and I can get full custody of the kids. I want my family back. Steve, what the hell do you want? A hysterical Kathy yelled into the phone. I want you to choke on your spit and die, Kathy, I replied before she quickly hung up, shocked. I was chilling on my porch when the cops showed up. You're late, I told them. Kathy was accusing me of threatening her life, but I had already talked to my lawyer who was waiting for me at the station. Client didn't threaten his ex-wife. My lawyer told the cops he was just expressing a wish, not making a threat. But she took it as a threat because she's still being followed by people hired by your client. It's not against the law to have someone watched unless you have a recording of Mr. Moore threatening to harm Mrs. Kelly. You have no case, Mr. Moore. Why don't you just move on? She left you, it happens. But if she loses it and someone gets hurt, we'll be coming for you. Is there any way to put an end to this? I asked my lawyer, my client wants his kids back. If Mrs. Kelly gives up custody, he'll back off. That's for the court to decide. Then we are done here, my lawyer said. We left the following Sunday morning while having breakfast and reading the newspaper on the deck. The doorbell rang. I opened the door to Kathy's parents. Steve, do you have a minute to talk? Sure, come on in, I said. They were dressed for church. Can I get you a cup of coffee? No, thank you. What brings you here? She asked. Kathy's father spoke up. Steve, we know what our daughter did wasn't right. Especially with you going to jail, but she's our only child and we don't want anything bad happening to her. Look, I'm not trying to harm her, she made some bad choices and now she's facing the consequences. I just want my kids back, they are better off with me, especially since she's been having a streak of bad luck. I'd hate for something to happen to them if something happens to her. They looked at me, not sure what to say. Steve, we'll talk to her, but you know how she is, Kathy's mother said, trying to ease the tension. That's where you're mistaken. The woman I married would never have cheated or thrown me to the sharks. I don't recognize her now except as the mother of my children. I want her to suffer a horrible and painful end of life. I don't forgive and I don't forget. They left quickly. I think I made my point. Thursday evening, the visitor I had been expecting finally arrived. It was just after 7 and getting dark. She must have walked because I didn't hear a car. She rang the bell, I looked through the peephole and let her in. She was all ready. The woman I married would never have cheated or betrayed me like this. I don't even recognize her anymore, except as the mother of my kids. I want her to suffer a miserable and painful end. I won't forgive or forget what she did. She left in a hurry. I think I made myself clear. Thursday evening, the visitor I was waiting for finally showed up. It was after 7 and already dark. She must have walked here because I didn't hear a car. She rang the bell, I peeked through the door and let her in. She was already there. I was pissed when she walked in. I was waiting for a call, but seeing her in person was even better. Come in, Kathy. Want a drink? I offered. Acid hemlock on the rocks, I said, closing the door. Very funny, you're such a prick, she said. I opened the door again. I think we are done here. Nice of you to stop by for a short, miserable life, I said, holding the door open. I'm not leaving until we talk, she replied, sitting down gingerly in the living room. Suit yourself, I responded, closing the door and going to get a glass of wine. What the hell? What brings you to our humble home? I still own half of this house, she said, minus what I paid after the divorce. I reminded her that I wanted to sell the place. What will it take to lower the price, she asked. An act of God. I asked if she was willing to cover the loss with interest. I just want you to leave this neighborhood and stay away from me, I stated. That's never going to happen, she declared. You still hate me that much? She asked. More than you can imagine, she replied. It was terrible how everything happened, but I never meant to get involved with Bob. She basically said it was a coincidence. She couldn't believe I was that dumb or clueless. Bullshit, Kathy. Things don't just happen out of nowhere unless he threatened you with a weapon. You went along with it willingly. Was he really that much better in bed that you had to ruin our marriage and family? I got so mad. It wasn't about the sex, he needed me. He had no one. We fell in love because we both needed each other, she said defensively. What were you doing, charity work? I needed you. Our kids needed you. Our marriage needed you. But you chose your needy lover over us. And now he's dead. I said, I'm way less needy now, with a smile on my face as I remembered. I wish I was the one driving the car that took him out, she admitted. Steve, you've become so bitter. Finding joy in someone else's misfortune is messed up, she scolded. I wish I could blame myself for this, but you and your side piece played a big role, I argued. That's a weak excuse, Kathy. 60% of marriages end in divorce, but not all exes go around hating each other, I pointed out. I don't give a damn about anyone else's marriage, just mine. How long was I played for a fool, she asked. Does it even matter? I asked myself. To me, it does. 2 months, 3, 5, she kept asking about it. 5 months in, it just happened the first time and I almost told you. I was devastated, she revealed calmly, sounding rehearsed. But you didn't tell me, and you weren't that devastated because it kept happening. How many times did you screw him in our bed? I demanded. Never. I wouldn't do that to you, she said angrily. So it was okay to screw him everywhere else. Many of our friends saw it but never told me. You proved you couldn't be trusted, I retorted. So where do we go from here? Listen, this house is the only thing tying us together now, she said. What about the kids? I'm not letting them go, no matter what you say, I replied firmly, my thoughts racing. Kathy, I'm not trying to persuade you. You have full custody because of what you pushed me to do. If I hadn't lost it with Bob and his car, I might have had a chance. Bob got what was coming to him. Now it's just you and me, I said, watching as her eyes widened. Steve, are you threatening me? She asked, her voice filled with concern. Deprive my kids of their mother? I answered sarcastically, never. But if something were to happen, like a heart. If I get hit by a lightning bolt or some crazy accident, I'll make sure the kids never forget you. So, if you got any last wishes, better jot 'em down quick. You never know what could happen. I got that line from a movie where a hitman tells his target to get their shit together. I'm outta here, Kathy said, getting up. We had a good 12 years. Kinda sucks it had to end. She tried to kiss my cheek, but I pushed her away, almost knocking her over. Don't ever touch me again. I warned you. You're a 304, I said. Wow, I was totally shocked. I'm sorry, I just thought, she started. What did you think? That we are cool now? You make me feel disgusted, I told her, my eyes burning with anger. Sorry, she said, looking flustered and horrified. Don't be sorry, because I'm not, I shot back. She walked out and started down the driveway. Oh, by the way, you know that look you just gave me? Bob had the same look right before the car ran him over. Too bad I didn't have a camera to show you, I added. I shut the door and watched Kathy run for her house. In truth, I was the one who started the fire. So, I was at Bob's place and I just needed 2 Gatorade bottles filled with gas and a lit cig. I made sure everyone was out of the house before I did anything. I was hoping the fire department wouldn't be called until the whole house was up in flames. But that plan went to shit. It only took like 5 minutes from start to finish, including tossing the Gatorade bottles into a neighbor's recycle bin. I told them I had to use the bathroom, snuck out the side door, and cut through the backyards to Bob's place. No one even knew. Missed me. I wish I could say I was the one responsible for Bob's demise, but I can't. It was just Bob being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe just his own dumb luck. If he had listened to his mom and looked both ways like she'd probably told him as a kid, he'd still be kicking. But no matter what I say, Kathy and her fam still think I had something to do with it. And honestly, part of me feels bad that it wasn't me, but I would never do something like that. I've been locked up before and I ain't trying to go back, especially not to the joint up north. Anyways, by now Kathy was... She's probably at home freaking out, thinking she's next on my hit list. Am I going after her? No way. I'll just drop some hints and mess with her until she goes crazy and the court gives me back my kids. But I'll definitely warn any potential home buyers about the arsonist in the neighborhood who's still on the loose. I like living where I am, especially with my 2 kids nearby. Who knows, maybe when they are teenagers they'll want to live with me. I can dream, right? It's the only good thing that has happened. So, the craziest thing that happened to me during all of this was meeting this girl named Ellen. She works for the State Department of Corrections. I had to report to her in the first year after I got out of jail to make sure I was getting my act together. Ellen is no nonsense and doesn't take any crap. After we got all the boring stuff out of the way, we started talking and realized we might have a thing for each other. Unfortunately, Ellen couldn't date me until my probation was over, but finally, we were able to go on a proper date. So I was on a date with this chick and I opened up about my trust issues. And then she hits me with the fact that most ex-cons she deals with are full of BS. So now we are both trying to work through our trust issues together while getting to know each other better. Ellen really got me reflecting on my life since my ex-wife dipped on me. She made me realize that my behavior was holding me back from having any real, meaningful relationships. She straight up told me it's time to move on. She totally had me convinced when she said if I screwed up and ended up back in jail, she'd own my ass and do whatever she pleased with it. And let me tell you, I wouldn't even wish that on my worst enemy. She said it all with a smile that gave me the chills, but I gotta admit, I believe her. When I'm around her, things never get boring because as tough as I am, Ellen is one woman I wouldn't mess with. But the best part is, deep down I know she wouldn't mess with me either. That's just the kind of bond we have. Finally getting my shit together and ready to put myself out there for love again. Let's do this.